Hello, I'm Gus Downing, publisher and editor of the D&D Daily, and this is the LP News Network. We're here today with Mike Lamb, Vice President of Asset Protection for Kroger. Today's session is entitled Change Management, from jobs to teams to realignments and initiatives. While managing change has always been a critical function every executive has to be able to master, never before has it been as critical as it is today. With retailers rolling out chain-wide programs like curbside pickup and ship from store, in literally a few cases overnight, change is guaranteed, and how you manage it will determine how far you go and how far you get. You've got to be able to handle it and be open to it every day of your career, because the day you think you've got it set and you've got it figured out, somebody somewhere is going to throw you a curveball that cuts you off at the knees. Over the last 5 years, Mike Lamb has successfully navigated and managed the change process at 3 of the biggest AP positions out there. He's done it with skill, finesse, political savvy, and a touch of humility that everyone can learn from. And he's here today to share some of his thoughts with us about managing change. Mike, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.
You know, you've successfully managed some huge change when it comes just from changing companies, from Home Depot to Walmart to Kroger. What's the key, and are there some common denominators that apply, not just the job-changing process, but also to the change in the teams, initiatives, and any change process?
Yeah. As I think about, your question there, Gus, the thing that I think resonates most with me around the 3 organizations that I've been associated with is, the personality of each one of those companies. What do they stand for? What's working well within those organizations that they want to continue to build upon? And then where are the gaps? Not just within the field of asset protection, but more broadly the business. So as I've made those transitions over the past 10 years or so between these 3 great organizations, what I've learned is in onboarding, it's seek to understand, before you seek to be understood. Know the personality of the organization in terms of its core values and what it stands for, and then get to know the team that you'll be leading, the team that you'll be managing. I've often found that in the teams that I've had the privilege of leading, that there's tremendous talent that exists across those teams. Sometimes it's merely a function of getting sort of the right seat on the bus for the right player. And aligning those teams in such a way that you can then advance your business. I think you got to have a plan. There was a leader I used to be associated with that said, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you. And I think once you've gotten into an organization and you understand sort of its personality, its nuance, and you look at your asset protection team, I think you also have to appreciate the company's going the direction it's going. It is the responsibility of the AP organization to build a program that supports those strategic objectives. So whether that's scan and go or mobile pay or the expansion of self-checkout, all of which as loss prevention professionals bring about increased risk, you have to go with them. And you have to bring data to the table, right? I mean, it's got to be a scenario by which emotion's important and passion matters, but you got to bring data, the analytics of that data to the table to say there is a risk and here's what we'll do to mitigate those risks. So to your opening question, I've had the privilege of working for 3 great organizations. I'm now proudly associated with Kroger, a family of companies, and it's a good place. Yeah.
When it comes to managing, the biggest challenge for a senior leader, when it comes to managing a big change process like a reorganization or realignment for a large team, I mean, how do you maximize performance, results while you're going through that? I mean, can you talk about a realignment process?
Yeah, I think, my philosophy is sometimes you have to slow down to speed up. And there was one organization that we took about the task of re-engineering its returns program, which, as we know, as we think about customer service and the importance of service, that's kind of the epicenter of that service. And anytime the AP guy or lady comes in to say, we have risks in the legacy system or the current system that exists, and we need to retool it, it's enormous change. So as you think about change, one, you've got to sell the why before the what. And I'll say it again, you have to sell the why before the what. And that's where, back to my earlier comment, data, the analytics of data, around returns, the penetration of non-receipted returns, mirrored against where you have some of your highest loss categories, is oftentimes the necessary and compelling data point you have to share with leadership to say, we'll do this the right way, but we do have a gap, and I have a solution for the gap that will make us more profitable. And then what I've learned is you can't go it alone, right, Gus? You got to have IT support, right? You got to have financial support. You got to have HR support because you're changing process and you're changing programs on the front end of the store. So, as you think about something that's significant across an organization, and we did this at the world's largest retailer, so you have to be patient. You have to understand that Rome wasn't built in a day, but you can never lose sight of where you're going, and you can't lose your passion about getting there. And for me, at least in my leadership style, that's what I stay focused on. Anything worth having is worth working hard to get, and sometimes worth waiting on. You also find too, Gus, I believe, that sometimes the business will stall a bit, right? If you're going through enormous organizational change, people don't like change. It is just the nature of the human being, in my opinion. I heard a guy once say the only person that wants change is the baby with the dirty diaper, right? So the thing about change, and we've all read the 4 stages of change or the 8 stages of change, is stick with it. Don't waver. Do your homework ahead of time and push through. But the business may have to step laterally, or in some cases step back before it steps forward.
Interesting. How about when it comes to change in senior leadership? I mean, when you have a brand new executive leadership team or whatever come into the organization, from an AP senior leader perspective, how do you manage that, and how much time and focus does that kind of consume of yours? So sometimes does it take your eye off the ball going on in the stores? I mean, does that become the priority of that executive, is managing that change process?
I think it has to be. If you go through significant senior leadership change within the organization that you support, one, in my opinion, you better understand where they're headed, what's the same about how they'll lead, what's different about how they'll lead, and how you'll integrate and market your asset protection brand within that new strategy. I think it's very important. We all, I think, as leaders have a responsibility to manage our boss. And everyone has a boss, right up to the CEO who reports to the board of directors. And so understand what they're about, understand what works for them, learn their language, speak their language. And I have found the leaders that I admire the most have the unique ability to effectively manage up. It's easy to manage down, right? If you're writing my performance eval, that's an easier thing for you to do than if the person above you is writing yours. And for me, I think the key is, how do you stay a step ahead of the leadership? And after 38 years, I've worked for some outstanding leaders. What I've always tried to do, may not effectively work every time, Gus, but what I've tried to do is stay a step ahead, anticipate where your boss is taking you, and get there before he or she does.
Any tricks on how to do that? Any advice?
Work hard. I know that's cliche, but for me, you understand that you have to understand the personality of your supervisor, right? What are their hot buttons? And it doesn't take you long to sort of figure that out. And once you sort of understand, again, the nuance of their personality, work to stay a step ahead. It's not easy. It's not easy. And, for me at least, it's not going to work 100% of the time. But the more times you're right than wrong about staying ahead of where they're going next, I think the more effective you become as a leader, the more credible you become as a leader, and the more effective your brand becomes along the way.
What if you get a new boss? I mean, let's say they switch you from operations over to human resources or to legal, okay? What's that process and how should a senior LP executive approach that?
Well, one, you're not going to have a choice. So when that change does take place, I think it goes back to what I said earlier. How is that department uniquely different from the one you used to report through? So if you shift from operations into legal, or if you shift from operations into human resources, what do they stand for? What's important to them? I think you have the responsibility as a leader, Gus, not just to acquiesce against their desires, but market your programs. What are you about? What do you stand for? How are you going to help the business in totality? And I've always had this sort of cliche, I had it on my bulletin board back, my former company, it's never confuse effort with results. We can all be working really hard, but if it's not delivering the desired result, we ought to change what we're doing in the way in which we're doing it. And I've seen a lot of departments that sort of get lost on that. People feel it's okay and they're adding value because they're working hard. And that's important, and you should appreciate that. But the hard work ought to be manifesting itself in your business results. And to the extent it isn't, change it. Don't be afraid to change it.
Be open-minded about it.
Take a risk. Yep.
Sure.
I think in our business sometimes you got to be the person that says, I'm going to throw 6 things against the wall. And I'm sure 1 or 2 will stick. And those are the ones I'm going to run with. I think trial and error is important.
What about the 4 things?
Nobody's perfect the first time they do it, right?
What about the 4 things that are broken?
The 4 things that are broken?
Yeah, if you throw 6 against the wall.
Well, you walk away from them. Yeah. If those strategies didn't work for you, based on your customer, based on your environment, based on the ineffectiveness of it, you step away. But it's like, if you're going to make an omelet, you got to crack a few eggs. Yeah. And as I was saying earlier, I think I've probably learned more from the mistakes I've made along the way than I have the successes.
Certainly, absolutely.
For me, the pain points of realizing where you've fallen short remind you of not to fall short again.
Right. What advice do you have for the young executive that is going through some big change, whether it's a new job or, like we discussed, a new boss or a promotion to corporate? Going from the field to corporate is the biggest jump in an executive's career. And that change is huge. Is there some advice you can share with that young executive?
I would say it's okay to be out of your comfort zone. Let's say I'm a regional person, right? And I'm working for an organization, I'm credible, I've got a lot of success over the years, and now I'm taking the next step and I'm coming into a general office, a home office, a store support center environment. You have to recognize and understand that job's going to be uniquely different than the one you left. And the one that you were in, you've demonstrated a skill set, obviously, or that leadership team would not have elevated you, but your job has now changed. And learn to work different muscles, right? You may be real strong at that regional muscle, Gus, but you got to build the calves now because you're in a general office or store support environment, and the role changes. So it's okay to be uncomfortable would be one of the comments I'd make around that, and to embrace change because it's inevitable in our business.
Well, Mike, thanks for being here today. We appreciate it.
My pleasure, Gus. My pleasure.
Well, that's it for this episode, ladies and gentlemen. We'd like to thank you for watching. And until next time, let's keep them all safe out there.